Our top focus story on the broadcast: the Indo-Tibetan Border Police has recommended 21 personnel for President's Medal for taking on the Chinese soldiers at the line of actual control. The citation talks of the personnel responding fiercely to the advancing Chinese troops and the ITBP personnel fighting shoulder to shoulder with the army. Abhishek Bhalla brings you our top story tonight. They displayed unparalleled valor. These braves gave a befitting reply to aggressive tactics adopted by the Chinese soldiers. On the night of 15th of June, along with soldiers of the army, men of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police fought back on the treacherous peaks of Ladakh. In freezing conditions, high up in the Himalayas, they defended Indian territory. And now their selfless act has been recognized by the government. The Indo-Tibetan Border Police, that's the border guarding force at the line of actual control, has recommended 21 of its personnel for police medal for gallantry.
Imagine one ITBP soldier facing 10 PLA soldiers, and still the victory was in the lap of ITBP personnel. This valor showed by ITBP is most exemplary, outstanding, par excellence. And this can easily be attributed to good training imparted by their command structure, their high altitude experience, their deployment in Himalayas.
Now new details have emerged on how the Chinese plot was foiled on the night of 15th of June. As the Galwan Valley witnessed a bloody hand-to-hand combat, PLA troops opened multiple fronts in Eastern Ladakh. ITBP sources say that a group of 20 to 25 ITBP Jawans stood their ground as more than 200 Chinese soldiers rained stones from a vantage point.
You see the bravery of ITBP personnel which has been shown from time to time, and it is an exemplary organization, worthy of claim, worthy of praise.
Not only did the ITBP personnel defend their post, they also forced the advancing Chinese forces to retreat. On multiple occasions, the ITBP Jawans engaged in a fierce hand-to-hand combat that lasted in some instances for between 17 to 20 hours, finally forcing the Chinese to fall back.
First official account put out by ITBP about events in Eastern Ladakh at the line of actual control, it's very clear that Galwan was not the only ugly skirmish that took place between the two armies. In fact, it's clear now that such incidents had taken place between May and June in various other friction points. The ITBP has also stated that in some of these cases, the wounded Indian Army Jawans were rescued and taken back to the rare areas by ITBP. With Jitendra Bahadur Singh, Abhishek Bhalla in New Delhi for India Today. Joining me on the broadcast is Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. He's former Chief of Staff of the Fire and Fury Corps. He was based extensively, he served extensively in the Ladakh region. Also with me is Professor Brahma Chilani, one of India's finest voices on matters military and strategy, especially when it comes to an adversary like China, and India Today's editor Defense, Abhishek Bhalla. Professor Chilani, does the ITBP citation shed more light, more clarity on the valor of our braves in pushing the Chinese troops back at the line of actual control? Does it finally send out the message that India did not succumb, as some in our country seem to believe?
That's true, Gaurav. I think the Indo-Tibetan Border Police statement on Troop Gallantry Awards, it's significant because it reveals multiple clashes with the encroaching PLA troops since early May, including nights of fighting in which The ITBP's troops' all-out response helped to keep advancing PLA troops at bay. As you pointed out, at some places the fighting lasted for 17 to 20 hours. So this is very significant. I think this statement is as significant as the Defense Ministry's note of August 4th, which was later withdrawn. That note, you would recall, pointed out that the Chinese troops had transgressed borders at multiple locations as part of quote-unquote unilateral aggression by China. So if we combine the Indo-Tibetan Border Police statement with the Defense Ministry statement of August 4th, we get a clearer picture of the aggression India is facing from China.
Yes, the aggression that India faces from China. Let's get very real about it, and we'll talk about this in greater detail in moments to come. General Kulkarni, the ITBP fought shoulder to shoulder with the army, also brought injured soldiers to the rear, the indication being that the face-off or the fight was happening somewhere in the forward areas. What does this show? Are we downplaying the threat that the Chinese pose to us at the line of actual control, sir?
Gaurav, firstly, my compliments and heartiest congratulations to all these ITBP personnel who have been rewarded for their brave courage and bravery and raw courage, I would put it that way. And yes, they are definitely deserving, and they have worked hard. They stay at and they are shoulder to shoulder with the army personnel along the LAC. There is no denying the fact. They also have the areas of responsibility. The raising of the ITBP, as it says, it is definitely is a good force. It's a formidable force. And wherever there would be, with the army shoulder to shoulder, and should such incidents have occurred where somebody is injured, they would be in the forefront to definitely evacuate them. There's no denying the fact. Everybody works together. Everybody is together. And we must compliment these boys. I'm told there's something like 294.
So that's not the point. That's not the question. The question is the Chinese belligerence, the Chinese incursion at the line of actual control, sir. It's far more serious than we make it out to be, it seems. There's been a face-off at multiple locations. Let me quickly bring in Abhishek Bhalla for more on this. So Abhishek, it's perhaps not just at Petrol Point 14, Galwan, or 15 or 17A, or, the standoff that was happening at Raki Nala, Jeevan Nala area, Petrol Point 10, 11, 12, 13, as some are saying. Is this more widespread and the standoff is far more serious, Abhishek?
Well, most definitely, Gaurav. And, this statement from the ITBP has made one thing very clear, that Galwan was not an isolated incident. In fact, there was a run-up to what happened in Galwan. And preceding the Galwan ugly clash, there had been similar incidents, skirmishes, in all friction points. What sources have told me was that one of the ugliest of these was actually on May 17th and 18th at Pangong Lake. And since then, Pangong has emerged as the biggest flashpoint. In fact, in early May, before 5th of May, which is the cutoff date since the standoff started, according to official records, there was a skirmish at Galwan itself. Sources say that there were such incidents in 3-4 places, and that's the reason why ITBP has recommended Gallantry awards for its soldiers, for its troops. And also what is important to note is that the recommendation that ITBP has made does not include the Galwan incident. So that tells us that preceding the Galwan incident, there were several other clashes. So the situation was extremely volatile much before Galwan. In fact, Galwan was one of the reasons why, one of the reasons behind
remains,
the tension that was building up.
It was extremely volatile. Does it remain extremely volatile? Does it remain extremely volatile? Stay with me, Abhishek. Professor Chilani, when Army Chief General Manoj Mukund Naravne visited the Pangong area, or when he visited that area, he awarded the troops, awarded them with Chief's commendation, especially those who had faced off with the Chinese troops at Pangong. ITBP says its personnel gave a befitting response to the Chinese stone pelters, the stone pelting soldiers. The standoff lasted between 17 to 20 hours. The ITBP fought all night. all indicators that contrary to what was being said, India clearly no pushover for the Chinese troops at the LAC, whether our army or our ITBP, at least in the initial face-off.
I agree with you, Gaurav. Imagine if India had not downplayed these clashes, had India given its armed forces a free hand to deal with the invading PLA troops, the situation today would have been much better for India. China's aggression has gone from bad to worse. In fact, there have been newer incursions since mid of May. In other words, we discovered these incursions, the first incursions were discovered in early May. And then according to the Defense Ministry's own note of August 14th, which was withdrawn from the website of the Defense Ministry, there were fresh incursions starting from May 17th, 18th. Had we taken the Chinese encroachment seriously from the very outset, the situation today would have been much more manageable. Instead, what we face are the narrowing of India's options. Today, the Chinese are sitting inside Indian territory at multiple points. At Devsan, in the hot spring Gogra sector, at Pangong Lake sector. So we have multiple Chinese encroachments that India has to deal with. And at Galwan Valley, we had this buffer zone created for 30 days. That 30-day period is over.
Yes.
Yeah, Gaurav.
Okay. Okay. Go on, sir. Complete your sentence.
In the Galwan Valley, there was a 30-day
so let me quickly bring in General Kulkarni. So, General Kulkarni, the situation... Yes, and that period is now over. General Kulkarni, India was far more aggressive in its response initially. Did we then put the ball in the court of whether it's military diplomacy or diplomats taking over, and after that China's only strengthening its forces? Is that what is happening? Has the situation, in your appreciation, you've been chief of staff in that area, has it become from bad to worse?
No, you see, Gaurav, what happens is all this talk is at hindsight. Let me be honest to you. You know, these kind of transgressions have been taking place. They will take place because of the perception problem. Why all this pushing and pulling and all that has happened, and why this fist fighting has taken place is because to push the people that they have transgressed into perceived our area, and they seem to be thinking it is their area. It is because of this. It doesn't just happen on the 5th of May and beyond. It's been happening earlier also. Even when I was there, it would be happening there. So we push them, they go back, and that's the end of it. That is why the peace and tranquility agreements are there.
No, but this time it's far more serious.
That is why it is there. To say that, you know, the Chinese have done this and that we could have hit them hard, well, it is not like that. You know, it's all, there's some basic norms to be followed. Okay, that the Chinese do not sort of respect it, that the Chinese have not respected it. They were respecting it so far. They have not respected it now. Now we know exactly what it is. Now, of course, the reactions will be different. Earlier, based on the peace and tranquility agreement, the reactions are different. You know, you don't start firing, kicking and everything. Yes, if they've transgressed, you push them back as hard as you can, push them back, and they do go back. It is not that they aren't going back. They do go back. But it is this time that they decided to stay put is what is the problem, not for any other reason.
Brahmachalani, if they are creating problems for us, should we not be creating problems for them? Is that not the best way to deal with a belligerent China? Now we know how China behaves. China is no friend of ours. Look at the way it's behaving. It has anyways been behaving with countries like Pakistan, stalling us at nuclear suppliers group and so on. Brahmachalani, does India's response indicate that we are unwilling even now to take hard decisions on China? Or do you expect Prime Minister Narendra Modi to maybe clear the air on this from the ramparts of the Red Fort?
There are two things here. First, India has a deeply rooted reactive and passive culture. This reactive culture of India allows China to select when and how to needle India, or when or how to infringe India's sovereignty. We need to come out of our reactive mode. We need to abandon our passive approach. That's one. Second, when Prime Minister Modi delivers his Independence Day speech tomorrow, I hope he will break his long silence on China's aggression. It's very important for the Prime Minister to speak up on China's aggression. Today, the international environment is such that there is rising international concern about China's expansionism. There's international support for India. India is seen as a victim. It's important for the Prime Minister to speak up clearly, to name and shame China. He also needs to repair the damage from his June 19th statement.
Yes.
The statement that he made at the all-party meeting. So I hope that tomorrow Prime Minister Modi will speak up on China.
Fair enough. General Kulkarni, is that also your expectation that now from the ramparts of the Red Fort, because what the Prime Minister says from the ramparts of the Red Fort is India's stance, and China will take that very, very seriously. Some steps we've taken, but a lot more needs to be done, especially it's our Independence Day. On our Independence Day, we don't want Chinese to be giving us trouble at the line of actual control. We want to send a very clear message. They need to back off. We speak in one voice as a nation.
Gaurav, it's very difficult for me to say, but notwithstanding that, I don't think the Prime Minister is allowed. He's given free hand to the army to do what it is to be doing. The diplomacy is working. The economic sanctions are in place. Now, I don't think, it's my personal view, that I don't think the Prime Minister would say anything, which would be which rather would start a contradiction. No, nothing like that. I think it would be a normal thing. He would speak, definitely, whatever has to be said, but not naming anybody, I think, personally. And secondly, things are in place, the talks are going on, the economic sanctions are in place, diplomacy is at its best. Now, to say something different than what is going on, I think it would not be fair. That's what I feel. It would not be fair.
Is that enough?
It should be saying.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Brahmachalani, the steps that India has taken so far and the steps that India, as many say, intends to take, including keeping China out of 5G in India, are these steps enough, or we need to do a lot more?
Gaurav,
and what should those steps be?
If the steps by India had been adequate, China by now would have vacated the spoils of its aggression. It would have vacated the vantage points it's occupying. The fact is that unless India imposes substantive costs on China, China will not roll back its aggression. So the steps that India has taken, these are good steps. They need to be augmented. They need to be intensified. They need to be economic and diplomatic offensive against China. Since we are reluctant to impose military costs at this stage, it's important for India to exercise its economic and diplomatic options. For example, why is India not launching a diplomatic offensive against China's aggression? Why are we so quiet? Why are we unwilling to speak up on China? Now, this is an important question. We have nothing to lose. We are a victim of China's aggression. So the least we can do is to call China out on its aggression. We need to also start imposing trade sanctions on China.
Absolutely. Some much harder steps. Have India's responses so far, in your appreciation, been different from India's responses in the past to Chinese transgressions? Professor Chilani.
See, the transgressions in the past were transgressions. Now India is faced with encroachments, where the Chinese have intruded into Indian territories and they have occupied vantage locations. Locations that give them a militarily commanding position vis-a-vis Indian forces. So the Indian response now cannot mirror the Indian response in the past. What India faces is the worst Chinese aggression since 1962. This is a mini 1962 that India is facing. So India's response has to be proportionate. India has to face up to the reality that China has unleashed aggression
comments to you?
in a major way.
Okay. Okay. General, this is mini 1962 and India's response needs to be very different from what India's response in 1962 was for a different end to this situation at the LAC. General.
Gaurav, well, this is not 1962. We know what we are doing. We are, we know exactly what's going on. And now it would not be fair to say it's the 62. Definitely it is not 62. We are holding up ground. We know not one single army post has even been touched by anybody of that matter, number one. Number two, like these are transgressions. These are transgressions. And that is why these peace and tranquility agreements were there. What were these agreements meant for? To ensure that the troops don't indulge in, firing at each other. But now what has happened is there is a breach of trust. This breach of trust by the Chinese.
Frankly, that really hasn't worked. Those peace and tranquility agreements are not worth the paper they've been written on. At least not for the Chinese, and perhaps our response also now needs to be very, very different. We need to look beyond. Brahmachalani and General Kulkarni, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is all set to set a record. He will be unfurling the tricolour from the ramparts of the Red Fort for the 7th time, a record for a non-Congress Prime Minister. What has he said in the past? What is he likely to say this time? From what we've been told, Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, will be big on his agenda.
When Prime Minister Modi made his first speech from the ramparts of the Red Fort, months after he rode to power in flamboyant style in 2014, he ensured it will make it to the record books. The 96-minute address was the longest ever by any Prime Minister.
भाइयों बहनों, इस आजादी के पर्व पर मैं एक योजना को बहुत तेज आगे बढ़ाने का संकल्प करने के लिए आपके पास आया हूं। एक प्रधानमंत्री जन धन योजना, इस प्रधानमंत्री जन धन योजना के माध्यम से हम देश के गरीब से गरीब लोगों को बैंक अकाउंट की सुविधा से जोड़ना चाहते हैं।
When he next appeared at the Red Fort to give his vision for India, Modi and his government's popularity had only increased. And this was most evident as Modi, sporting a traditional safa, did what no other Prime Minister did. Break SPG protocol to meet a group of school children. In 2016, Modi, in headgear deriving its flair from the long flowing train, thundered from the Lal Killa, attacking Pakistan for glorifying terror and breaking up POK and Balochistan.
पाकिस्तान के एक प्रधानमंत्री को अभिनंदन करते हैं, उसका आदर करते हैं, तो मेरे 125 करोड़ देशवासियों का आनंद है।
Thunderous applause greeted Prime Minister Modi in 2017 when his motorcade reached the Red Fort. Dressed in his trademark half-sleeved kurta and turban, he promised a new India by 2022.
पूर्ण संवेदनशीलता के साथ जन सामान्य की सुखाकारी के लिए, सुरक्षा के लिए कुछ भी करने में हम कमी नहीं रहने देंगे।
In the last year of his first term, the Prime Minister stuck to party colours once more. The red and saffron contrasted brightly against the crisp white kurta as the Prime Minister highlighted the contours of the world's biggest Medicare scheme, Ayushman Bharat, and promised to take an Indian into space by 2022.
So 8 hours to go for the Prime Minister's address from the ramparts of the Red Fort. Atmanirbhar Bharat is likely to be one of the Prime Minister's key focus areas. We'll track that story very closely. Wish you a very happy Independence Day for tomorrow. And many thanks for watching.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, Like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.